A sweater that costs $300 isn't expensive because of the yarn, it's expensive because of what it represents. Walk into a high-end clothing retailer, and you'll find Icelandic wool sweaters priced between $200 and $500. A comparable merino wool sweater costs half that. The difference isn't in warmth, durability, or even rarity of the raw material. What you're paying for is a system, a cascade of economic decisions, cultural narratives, and market positioning that took centuries to build. Understanding why requires us to trace how a utilitarian farm garment became a luxury good. Let's start with the material itself. Iceland's climate, treeless, windswept, brutally cold, created a specific evolutionary pressure. The sheep that survived there developed wool with unusual properties, thicker fibers, higher lanolin content, and a natural crimp that traps air more efficiently than standard wool. But here's where most people stop. They assume premium material equals premium price. That's only part of the equation. The sweater itself, the lopapeysa, emerged around the 1950s, but its roots are older. For centuries, Icelandic farmers hand-knitted wool garments from their own sheep. The work was brutal, repetitive, and necessary. By the mid-20th century, Iceland was rebuilding after World War II. The government began promoting traditional crafts as cultural markers, as proof of national identity. A hand-knitted sweater wasn't just clothing anymore, it was Iceland. Tourism changed everything. By the 1970s and 80s, Iceland transformed from an isolated agricultural economy into a destination. Visitors wanted authenticity. They wanted something that couldn't be found in New York or London or Tokyo, a sweater with a story. Suddenly, the market inverted. What had been cheap and functional became rare and desirable. The economics flipped. Here's the first feedback loop. As prices rose, production shifted. Factory-made sweaters entered the market, undercutting hand-knitters. But that created a problem. If sweaters were mass-produced, they lost their cultural capital. Tourists no longer wanted factory goods, they wanted to believe they were buying authenticity. Producers responded by emphasizing craft, heritage, limited production. Scarcity became the selling point. Let's examine the cost structure. A handmade Icelandic wool sweater requires 40 to 60 hours of labor. Even at modest Icelandic wages, roughly $20 to $30 per hour, that's $800 to $1,800 in labor alone. Add materials, overhead, retail markup, and shipping. You're already at $200 minimum, but that's before the brand premium kicks in. Brands like Álafoss, Handknit Iceland, and lopapeysa have built reputations over decades. They position themselves not as clothing manufacturers, but as cultural custodians. Their marketing doesn't say this sweater is warm. It says, you're wearing 800 years of Icelandic tradition. That narrative carries a premium. A sweater with a story sells for 3 times the price of an identical sweater without one. This is where the niche market mechanics become visible. A niche market thrives on 3 conditions: scarcity, authenticity, and narrative. Iceland has all 3. The country has only about 370,000 people. Hand knitting is genuinely labor-intensive, and Iceland's cultural identity is genuinely tied to wool production. These aren't marketing inventions, they're real constraints and real history. But that reality is weaponized in pricing. The second feedback loop is psychological. High prices signal exclusivity. Exclusivity creates demand. Demand justifies the high prices. A sweater that costs $80 feels cheap, available to anyone. A sweater that costs $300 feels like an achievement, a marker of taste and resources. Buyers aren't just purchasing wool. They are purchasing membership in a club of people who can afford Icelandic sweaters. But here's where the system becomes fragile. Niche markets are vulnerable to substitution. Merino wool from New Zealand is objectively excellent. Cashmere blends are warmer. Synthetic fibers are cheaper and more durable. The only thing keeping the Icelandic sweater market afloat is the belief that its cultural value is irreplaceable. If that narrative breaks, the price collapses. We've seen this pattern before. In the 1990s, Scottish tartan faced exactly this problem. Mass-produced tartan goods flooded the market. The cultural narrative weakened. Prices collapsed. Only the highest-end, most prestigious tartan makers survived, and they survived by doubling down on authenticity and heritage. Iceland's wool industry learned from this. They've protected their market by limiting factory production and emphasizing hand knitting. Geographic isolation has also been crucial. Iceland's small population and remote location mean that authentic hand-knitted sweaters are genuinely scarce. You can't mass-produce them without losing the hand-knitted claim. You can't outsource production to cheaper countries without destroying the made in Iceland story. The geography is part of the price mechanism itself. The supply chain reinforces this. Icelandic wool producers work with local knitters, many of them elderly women who learned the craft as children. Replacing them with factories would be economically logical but culturally catastrophic. The entire premium depends on the idea that real people in Iceland are making these by hand. The moment that stops being true, the market collapses. Now let's talk about retail distribution. Most Icelandic sweaters are sold through two channels: direct sales in Reykjavik to tourists or online to international buyers. Both channels have high margins. A sweater that costs $100 to produce might be retailed at $300. The markup isn't unusual for luxury goods, but it only works because the brand story justifies it. There's also a currency effect at play. Iceland's krona fluctuates. When the krona is weak, international buyers get a discount. When it's strong, prices rise in foreign currencies. This volatility actually protects the niche. If prices stayed constant in dollars, the market would eventually saturate. Fluctuation keeps demand fresh and makes each purchase feel like a unique moment. The durability of the sweater is also part of the narrative. An Icelandic wool sweater properly cared for lasts decades. Some families pass them down. This longevity justifies the price. You're not buying a seasonal garment, you're buying an heirloom. But here's the twist: that durability also means the market is self-limiting. If everyone buys one sweater every 30 years, total revenue stays flat. The industry survives only by constantly recruiting new buyers. This brings us back to tourism. Iceland now receives over 2 million visitors per year, more than 6 times the population. Most of them buy a sweater or consider it. That's the real market engine. Not local demand, not year-round fashion tourism. The entire price structure depends on continuous streams of wealthy visitors who view the sweater as a souvenir, a trophy, proof they went to Iceland. So why does an Icelandic wool sweater cost so much? It's not because of the yarn, it's because of a system: genuine scarcity, authentic cultural history, limited production capacity, brand positioning, tourism demand, and a narrative that justifies premium pricing. Each element reinforces the others. Remove tourism and the market collapses. Introduce mass production and the narrative dies. Weaken the cultural story and the price falls. The entire structure is elegant and fragile. That fragility is what makes it valuable. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe to explore how niche markets create value from scarcity and narrative. There's a new economics deep dive every week. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.